Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations. And don't forget to check out the Bad Weapon Rehabilitation servers at www.badweaponrehab.tf. Check the links in the description for more information, and let's get into the video.
Bottom C tier. Marginally useful only on larger maps. Anywhere else, useless. You just fucking die. Don't use them.
C tier? And that was a reluctant C tier. He wanted to put it lower. Look at him hovering over D tier. I'm not ashamed to admit that this ranking has lived rent-free in my head since I saw it. Oh god, that was almost 3 years ago. Okay, you know what? Maybe I'm a little ashamed to admit that. God, what the hell am I doing with my life? Well, right now what I'm doing with my life is standing up for the gloves of running urgently. C might be a passing grade, but the GRU deserves far better. C is what I got on my high school history test when I slept through all my classes, except for that one time we watched The Patriot starring Mel Gibson. Hopefully you can see how I got a job as a YouTuber instead of anything valuable to society. Oh yeah, we also watched a movie where Tom Cruise punches a horse in the face. But the GRU didn't sleep through class. They did their homework on time, got a good night's sleep, and brought a nice shiny apple to the teacher's desk. Or maybe a banana. Or a chocolate bar. Probably that one, actually. Is the opinion of one YouTuber from 2.5 years ago, who a lot of his comments disagreed with, grounds enough for an in defense of video? My bank account seems to think so. So here's why I'm speaking in defense of the GRU. The GRU are one of Heavy's most long-standing melee weapons, notable for their ability to increase Heavy's movement speed from 77% base movement speed up to 100% base movement speed. So the same speed as classes like Pyro, Sniper, and Engineer. This is a huge deal for Heavy. His slow movement speed is the biggest factor keeping him in check balance-wise, and this is the case with other heavy-hitting classes like Soldier and Demo, though it's handled a bit differently with those classes. Soldier and Demo bypass their slow movement speed through the use of blast jumping, either with rockets or stickies or the loose cannon. These methods cover some serious ground and get you to where you need to go quickly, but this comes at a cost. Health. The idea being that Soldier and Demo are extremely hard-hitting as well as bulky classes, so if you're gonna get them to the front lines quickly, you need to take away one of those defining factors. And even the jumper weapons follow this design philosophy by allowing them to keep their bulk while jumping in exchange for their damage output. And the gunboats on Soldier trade some of your firepower in exchange for less damaging mobility. And the man-treads are there. Free mobility is an insanely powerful tool in TF2. It's part of what makes Scout one of the strongest classes in the game. And for a very long time, the GRU was effectively free. If you've only just started playing TF2 after Jungle Inferno, first of all, I'm sorry, but second of all, you might find it a bit odd that the GRU heavies in NVM are constantly marked for death, but that's just what the GRU used to do. Anytime you held it out, they gave you the mark for death effect, which persisted for a couple of seconds after you put it away. This meant the dominant strategy was just put the GRU away a couple of seconds before you get into a fight, and bing bang boom, there's effectively no downsides, and Heavy gets free mobility at no cost outside of just base melee damage, which you weren't going to be using it for anyway, since closing the distance on an enemy with your melee as Heavy while you're marked for death is generally speaking a pretty stupid idea. Jungle Inferno changed things around, replacing the mark for death with a passive health drain at a rate of 10 health per second, and removing the damage penalty. It also has a slower holster speed, but holster speeds have been bugged and easily bypassed since their inception. It's really not a big deal. I think this is a really clever way to apply the same exact design ethos as something like rocket jumping onto Heavy without requiring anything mechanical on the part of the player. The gloves automatically make you go fast, so they automatically drain your health, simple as. They'll also regenerate your health at the same rate once they're put away, 10 health per second, but swapping to the gloves in the first place will also automatically take away 30 health. So rapid swapping isn't exactly encouraged since that'll drain you to nothing basically instantly. And this is base health that the GRU is draining. It's not taking away from your health pool in the same way a DOT effect like Afterburn or Bleed would. Again, this is a clever workaround to an obvious solution, which would be to just constantly pocket the GRU heavy. That would not only completely override the downside, but also allow the medic to constantly build Uber at the maximum rate. Not so simple anymore. In fact, overhealing heavies who are recovering health from the GRU has a little quirk where once the healing beam is off of them, it'll reset to 300 health even if it was higher than that while the beam was on them. This is one of the aspects of the weapon that I'm actually not a fan of just because it makes healing heavies feel really inconsistent, but I recognize that this is likely one of the many concessions that had to be made to prevent 1 million health heavies from running around uninhibited. Yeah, if you weren't around for the first week or so of Jungle Inferno, then just be glad you missed out on that, though looking back it seems almost quaint in comparison. So as far as I'm concerned, the nerf to the Gru was indeed justified. Free mobility on a class whose power is limited by his mobility is too strong of an attribute to leave unchecked. At least as powerful as it is with the Gru. But this isn't in defense of balance changes that Valve made that weren't terrible for once, it's in defense of the Gru. So are the Gru still good even after the nerf? Not only would I say they're still good, I'd say in some respects they got even better. Back in the day, the Gru was a very one-note weapon. It just got you to the front lines quicker, and that was the long and short of it. That's all people ever used it for. It was damn good at its job, but other situations that might benefit from Heavy having a bit of a speed boost didn't really fit the design of the weapon. You couldn't use it to close short-range gaps or retreat because the extra damage you take would just seal your fate. Holding out the Gru even for a couple of seconds in anywhere more dangerous than the run back to the front lines could end in disaster because of the lingering mark for death effect. You'd suffer from a drawback for just about as long as you benefited from the game. So it was pretty much just the running to mid tool. It's hard to say with a straight face that the new Gru isn't a bit worse in this particular aspect than the old Gru. The longer you have it out, the longer you'll need to spend refreshing your health. So you either put the Gru away earlier than you would with the old version, meaning you get to the front lines slower, or you keep them out the entire time and get to the front lines a lot squishier. And for maps with lengthy runbacks to the front lines where the Gru would be at their most useful, this is especially punishing. While keeping the same balance philosophy as blast jumping, this is objectively less effective at the one thing the Gru used to be used for. And so for people who stay in that old restrictive mindset of faster frontline pushing being all that the Gru is useful for, it's a complete downgrade. But now, in all of those other situations where you might want a speed boost, the Gru are infinitely more useful. Quickly crossing a sniper sightline with extra speedy, tricky movement is a lot more viable when the punishment is having to wait a few seconds to recover your health instead of taking headshot damage from a stray rocket. Retreating with the Gru has never been better. In fact, in situations where your health is already low, which is when you're likely to be retreating in the first place, there's literally no downside at all. Foolish gloves! You seek to lower my health? What health, bitch? You can clutch out so many escapes that you just couldn't before. And it's not just tense, it's satisfying. This is a flat out upgrade to how the Gru used to function, because retreating at low health with the old Gru would only make you even more vulnerable, while now you are only faster. And you can even use it to close the gap on enemies with the gloves themselves to engage in melee combat, and you can do it with decent efficiency since you can keep the pace with most enemies in the game. And there's no damage or swing speed penalties holding you back. These are unironically one of Heavy's best weapons for engaging in melee combat. Or hell, use it to close the gap with a shotgun, why not? Or even a minigun. This can be especially effective with jumping, since if you jump with a movement enhancing item, you'll maintain that momentum until you hit the ground. Just ask any Power Jack Pyro. This can even be useful for something like dive bombing with the Hualong heater, or just generally closing the gap on enemies for maximum minigun shredding. This can certainly be useful for ambushes with the Tomislav too. The possibilities are, they're not limitless, they are just gloves that make you move at an average speed. But hey, on Heavy, that's a pretty big deal. The Gru have traded specialization for versatility, and I think that makes the weapon way more fun and interesting to use. Using the Gru in the old days was totally mindless. It's just the thing you do before getting to mid. Now though, it's this much more engaging resource to use where you need to gauge how much max health you have to determine whether or not a risky maneuver is viable. And when it's something that's shorter and more non-committal, the answer to that is almost always going to be yes. Not to mention, with how much health Heavy has, sacrificing a little bit of something he has a lot of for multiple short-term benefits that get replenished quickly is a very beneficial trade compared to one long-term benefit. And even the issue of frontline rollouts being a bit neutered isn't quite as big of a deal as you'd think if you're using the chocolate bar. I've already covered this technique extensively in my video on the chocolate bar, but to be brief, if you eat the chocolate while you're recovering health from the Gru, it'll jack up your healing rate and get you back up to 300 health almost instantly. And for as much as I'll continue to defend the chocolate bar and say it's a viable weapon largely due in part to this, I guess, tech. Does eating chocolate after running fast count as tech? I will say that this is still a trade-off you're making because you're sacrificing the consistent burst heals of the banana and the superior team support of the sandwich in order to speed up your rollout efficiency and put you roughly on the same level as the old Gru. It isn't completely free anymore. You still need to give something up, and even though I think this combo is buggy as shit and janky as fuck, I don't see a real issue with its existence in terms of game balance because it still requires you to make a substantial sacrifice if you want to support your team most effectively. Unless you're the kind of Heavy who throws out a chocolate bar every time it refreshes. So like, the kind of Heavy who never has his gun revved up. Ultimately, I think the Gru stands as one of Heavy's best melee options, easily. In fact, I think only the Fist of Steel has it definitively topped, since those are downright broken, and only the KGB gives it any real competition. Though, even as a big fan of the KGB, well, that sounds fucking weird out of context, I have to admit that the situations where the Gru comes in clutch far outnumber the situations where you can manage to go on a crit spree thanks to the KGB. And no one else is around. But I'll be damned if the latter isn't way more fun when you do pull it off. I think the Holiday Punch is too much of a meme to really take all that seriously. Even its capacity to stuff Ubers with a random crit or tickly backstab isn't all that powerful considering the risk and effort required in order to do so. Not to mention the complete negligence on the part of the enemy team. The Warrior Spirit is basically garbage, so that's no competition at all, and then there's the eviction notice. This is the only time where I completely understand why people are angry at the Gru change. Not because of the Gru themselves, but because they indirectly applied the same change to the eviction notice as a result. I want to say that the change to this completely different weapon is where a substantial portion of the hatred towards the Gru comes from, and I understand that 100%. Trust me on this. The eviction notice used to be my go-to heavy melee weapon, and outside of making my bad weapon academy on it, it's been rotting in my inventory ever since, and it makes me miserable to say that. And the nerf was so stupid. Not even competitive players ever complained about the eviction notice. Hell, not even European competitive players complained about it. It was even on the proposed list of balance changes before Jungle Inferno dropped, and I guess people just didn't tell Valve they were being fucking stupid loud enough like they did with the Ambassador. Look, they didn't even give a direct reason for it like they did with the Gru. They just put it directly under the Gru changes like it should obviously apply universally when they're two extremely different weapons. But I guess since we're on the subject, competitive is another scapegoat that people like to point towards for just general weapon nerfs or bad balance decisions, even when the weapon has never been banned or complained about by even the most European competitive players. I'm sorry, Europe, but I'll keep giving you a hard time as long as your ban list includes the Buffalo Steak, Lock and Load, and Gas Passer. Come on, all the Americans have figured out that even throwing the damn thing through walls doesn't make it any good. I don't understand the thought process that competitive players or fucking YouTubers had any kind of direct say in exactly how weapons were balanced when Valve actually gave a shit about doing that. At one point, Banny mentioned how Valve asked him for input on certain changes they had proposed, such as buffing the reserve shooter since it was underused by players, something he advised against because the reserve shooter really doesn't need any buffs just because the player equip numbers don't reflect its effectiveness. He didn't propose any of his own balance changes. He didn't barge into the Valve office and start waving a gun around demanding that the poor souls in the TF team nerf the Gru into an unusable state. Look at the wording they use here. While we still believe it's okay to have a class of items that increases Heavy's movement speed, players have been able to easily mitigate the existing negatives. That's just a general balance change that has nothing at all to do with organized play, something that they're very open about in regards to why they changed the Razorback. Which, by the way, was a change that ended up benefiting both casual and competitive play, and oh hey, look at that. Even the Europeans don't ban the Gru. Kinda makes me wonder why the fucking steak is still banned then. What Valve cared about, generally speaking, was how often an item was equipped by the general player base and why. If it's because that weapon has basically no downsides and over-centralizes the meta around that class in any environment, including and especially casual, then knocking it down to the level of other weapons is understandable. Unless that class is medic for some reason. Then just leave you over there. You have fun now. Basically what I'm saying is leave competitive players alone. You can blame them for maybe the base jumper, but that's like it. Valve has been kind of terrible at rebalancing TF2 weapons for a very long time. It's kind of a miracle that as many weapons ended up in as good of a state as they have. And competitive really didn't factor into all that many balance changes at all. Even the updates that people will point to as being overly influenced by competitive players will flat out buff weapons banned in competitive, or at least weapons that were on the borderline at the time. They didn't exactly use whitelist.tf as a fucking hit list, guys. I didn't mean for this to turn to a competitive diatribe. I just keep seeing the comp players ruined the game narrative popping up, and I think it's fucking stupid. I find it hilarious that some people are perfectly willing to hold Valve accountable for their poor handling of the game, and rightfully point the finger at them for general neglect, but act like they were completely helpless and had their hands tied by external forces in order to make bad balance changes. The eviction notice was Valve's fault, but at the very least the current state of the groove was something good to come out of it. And hey, that was Valve's choice too. Valve is just as capable of making great changes as they are poopy stupid doo-doo ones, and in that aspect, we are more alike than different. We can just as rightfully point out that the Fists of Steel are completely broken as we can say that the stock fists are better than the GRU. What even is this? Oh no, he knows how to rocket jump. You know what? Thank you for your sacrifice, Scout.